I had a conversation with Dave Rubin a couple of years ago about whether the left is actually more censorious than the right, or whether it's only because whoever the minority is chooses to be a libertarian.
Yeah, that's exactly the truth. I think it's the latter. I think it is exactly the latter. Yes. The minority is always in favor of free speech.
Because I would say when Trump was in power, or just before then, there was a lot of conservatives talking about libertarianism. Whereas today, I hear a lot of conservatives making fun of libertarianism.
Well, that's actually an interesting counterpoint, I think. You're right about that conservatives have become less libertarian as we've lost power. And there is something to be said about that. It's a little bit of an interesting dynamic and not exactly what you'd expect. But in terms of the overall principles, I think conservatives didn't really start seeing the value in free speech until we were on the out and out, right? Until all of these platforms started descending upon us, until it got to the point where the left had really successfully demonstrated dominance in virtually every facet of the culture war. And then conservatives started saying free speech is really important. And the left started saying, you can't just say whatever you want. People need to use their speech responsibly. And one part of that is the fact that conservatives were a minority, or they had less power, and so they wanted the ability to speak freely. But I think another part of it is the current paradigm on the right is if the left does one thing, we do the other thing, right? If the left goes up, we go down. If the left goes down, we go up. I mean, we're just going to do the exact opposite of everything they do and say the exact opposite of everything they say. And a lot of the arguments you've been hearing from conservatives on free speech are arguments you'd hear liberals making 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And the reason conservatives are making them, unfortunately, isn't necessarily because every conservative holds so dearly to these principles. It's because the left is saying the opposite now, and we just have to say the opposite of whatever the left says.
Yeah, like maybe in the 70s and 80s where the LGBT movement felt more under attack, they were more likely to be like, just leave us alone. That's all we want.
And now it's like,
whereas
shut
that's
up.
what the conservatives today are doing.
Exactly. Now it's like, shut up, you will bow to this, you will bake the cake, you will trans your kid, everything that conservatives predicted would happen.
So
and that's why, well, one thing I just want to say is that's why it's a little disheartening. There are changes on the right I've seen over the past couple of years that I think have been good. But when the right changes too much, it's disheartening, because I look back and I say, the Christian right predicted basically everything that's happening today. That was a working formula. It had predictive power. And the right has strayed from it.
Give us examples.
So literally every single thing that was said about human sexuality on the cultural front by religious conservatives has turned out to be completely correct. So the idea that if you legalize gay marriage, and by the way, I don't even like to say it that way. That's bad framing, legalize gay marriage. Yeah. It's not as if there is this thing called gay marriage that conservatives were saying, no, you're not allowed to do it. It's that marriage is between a man and a woman. And we were saying the government should not have the ability to redefine or try to redefine that term. However,
but the argument from the conservatives at the time was you can't redefine without undefining. And then the gay folks were like, that's rubbish.
Exactly.
And now it's come to fruition.
And you're just opening the door for more bizarre and abnormal sexual lifestyle choices, which are ultimately destructive, not only for the individual who partakes in them, but those around them and society as a whole, to become normalized. And that's exactly what's happened. If you went back 5 years, 10 years, let's say, maybe, and you said, people will be accusing the children's author of the Harry Potter franchise of being genocidal because she said she doesn't like being called menstruator, you'd get laughed out of the room, right? That is the most insane, over-the-top, right-wing prediction of what the world could look like if the left had their way. It's beyond parody at this point, right? And it's only going to get worse if we don't continually push back. Now, that's not me trying to give people a black pill. It's me trying to give people a white pill, because, again, there is the option to push back. And in some instances, it's working. Look at what's happened to Bud Light. There are certain markets they haven't. I was making fun of him for having the Budweiser out before the show. I was like, we have to address this, and then we have to get rid of it because I don't want people seeing this in the clips.
Yeah, we bought it before the debacle.
Yeah, they purchased it before all of this happened.
Before everything went down.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Would you like this beautiful, very high quality, definitely not made in China, not that there's anything wrong with that, Pints with Aquinas beer stein for free? sent to your door? Would you also like a copy of The Jill sent to your door 4 times a year? This is the Pints with Aquinas newspaper, by the way. If you do, go to mattfradd.locals.com and become an annual supporter for any amount. We'll send you that stuff for free, and you get a bunch of other free things in return. You'll get more information by going over to mattfradd.locals.com. Thanks.